everybody. I'm Johnny White Proctor. Welcome to Michael St. John's Entertainment World.
I did, and you and I were there before a lot of those people, weren't even thought of in Hollywood, let's be honest.
Christian, not rolling, are you?
Yeah, rolling.
You are rolling.
Yeah.
He is
Well,
rolling.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, just not, yeah.
Gloria, what I would like to know about how did it feel when you first got into motion pictures? When your first time, your first experience before the camera? That's terribly important. Because
Oh, really?
were you born here in Beverly Hills?
I was born in El Paso, Texas.
You're a Texas girl?
Yes.
Yeah. So how
And
old were
Debbie
you?
Reynolds was born in El Paso, Texas.
That's right. Did she move to Burbank? They moved to Burbank.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And she was called to Hollywood because she could dance and sing, and she wrote that song.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then when she was going to be working at MGM in Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the Rain with Gene Kelly.
Yeah, and
Right.
Frank Sinatra.
And Frank wasn't in that.
Yes, he did dance in that.
Donald O'Connor.
Donald O'Connor.
Oh, Donald O'Connor.
Yes.
Donald O'Connor.
Because I was here.
Donald O'Connor, that's
Right.
right. I knew Donald O'Connor, I dated him.
You did? How was it?
He was a lovely person. He was a very respectful
Yes.
young man, a very charismatic,
Yeah.
and he was wonderful. He had a great personality.
Yes.
And he was teaching me to dance,
Yes.
and I used to dance with him.
Yes. And all
And
the
I learned to dance with him, and Sinatra took me to Vegas,
Yes.
and I had to dance with Sinatra.
My God.
But the one who gave me my dancing lessons
Yes.
was Donald O'Connor.
Isn't that something? Then Donald O'Connor was a comedian of sorts as well.
Yes, he
played
was.
a
He had
great light.
great comedy,
Great comedy. Yeah.
and it was natural,
Yes.
very natural.
Did you ever meet Jane Withers?
Yes, I did.
Because Jane and I are very good friends.
She was involved with many of the charities that I was involved
Right.
with. She came to the Thalians,
Yes.
and she was a friend of a lot of the Thalian people,
Yes. Yes.
which were all very successful actors and actresses.
Yes. Because I knew you knew my friend Ruta Lee, so
Yeah, I do
our
know-
friend, because we all
Yeah,
are
I know
good
Ruta,
friends.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ruta successfully married very wealthy men.
Yeah.
Hello.
She should be. She's like the Gabor, one of the Gabors.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
Darling.
and she was always hanging out with Debbie Reynolds.
Yep. That's why they got the Thalians together. They sponsored the Thalians.
Well, they kept the Thalians going.
They really
that Debbie
did.
did.
Yeah, exactly.
Debbie was president for many years.
Many years, yeah.
Nobody wanted the job because it didn't pay anything,
Right,
you know.
exactly.
If you're not making any money, you don't,
Exactly.
there's no honey.
Right.
It was for a good cause, the charity.
Yeah, they would raise funds for the mental health, the Thalians Mental
Yeah.
Health Community Center.
Right.
Some of those people had people in the mental illness department there,
Yes. The Children's Hospital too.
in the mental health department.
Yeah.
And they raised funds for other charities like the Children's Hospital,
Yeah,
the
the Cedars.
orthopedic,
Yes, section of the hospital.
downtown.
Yeah,
It was very interesting.
exactly. Because anytime they had that big celebration each year, she called and she said, "Darling, are you coming?" I said, "I can't afford it." "Don't worry about that. Get your ass over here." And that made me feel so good that our friendship lasts that long because we had known each other since the early 50s.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why she makes it the whole world know that we've been around a long time together, But you came along at the same time, really,
Right.
And when you first got into films, did you play a young girl? Did you play a teenager, or did you play?
I played a young girl.
Yeah.
And I started at 20th.
At 20th Century Fox. Who?
Yes.
Who was Hell? Was it Zanuck?
Zanuck
Yes.
and, what's the name of the man who?
Who was he involved with Gone with the Wind?
No, Zanuck was not with Gone with the
No,
Wind.
no.
Gone with the Wind was someone else.
Yeah, I know
David
that. But they
O'Selznick.
won. Yeah, Selznick. Selznick was.
David O'Selznick was
Selznick.
Gone with the Wind,
And I think Selznick was also at 20th Century Fox at one time.
but he was not involved.
MGM.
It was only MGM.
Yeah, only in MGM?
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
had this woman, which was that became my son's friend's stepmother. When David O. Selznick died,
Yeah.
Norton Simon married her.
Norton Simon.
Oh, yeah. I know the-
Yeah, yeah.
The museum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer
Jennifer
Jones,
Jones.
right. Because there's,
I knew Jennifer Jones, I knew
Yeah.
David O. Selznick.
yes. And the
And-
son endorsed me for what I'm doing now.
Oh, great,
Yes,
wonderful.
Yes, and he wanted to be an actor for a while, and he was on contract for I think with Warner Brothers,
Mhm.
and then the contract program they dispensed.
One
it
of the
back.
problems with being under contract in those days, they would put you under contract and never put you in a film.
Yeah,
Right.
but they still had to
And-
pay you though, right?
They paid you,
Yeah,
but
but
I
not
mean,
not very much.
your career didn't go forward because
Right.
you're waiting, you're on hold, you're on the
Oh,
shelf,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
and you're not being given any parts in any films, and you're being promised parts,
Yes.
and you never get them because they
Yeah.
give them to somebody else
Right.
that's more powerful.
Yeah.
How was the atmosphere at that time for you as a young actress?
For me, it was wonderful because the minute they saw me, they wanted to cast me.
Yeah, that's good.
And today, it doesn't happen that way, where they call in actors and actresses, line them up, and then select someone
Yes.
and give them a part immediately.
Yes,
You have to go through so many procedures.
that's right. The
Yeah.
process is much longer. now.
Yeah, it's longer,
Yes,
there's casting, there's, what do you call it, testing?
yes,
Yeah.
There's all kinds of
And more so today, you have. to-
roadblocks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of gatekeepers.
Yes.
But they package things through the agencies more now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't have a good agency representing you,
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah.
Right.
William Morris Endeavor primarily,
And
and
they,
CAA,
they
Yes.
merged.
CAA, ICM,
Yeah,
ICM,
and
yeah.
William Morris Endeavor.
yeah.
But the reason they do that is because they package everything in one house.
Right, and
You know,
from
they
A
used
to
to split
Z,
it up.
Yeah.
including distribution.
Right, everything's.
Like how
packaged.
will your documentary be distributed?
Yeah, and if you don't have distribution, I tell a lot of the young filmmakers that you've got to have some sort of idea about distribution because that's the thing
No,
that
that's,
that's
That's the main thing.
that appears, that also happens with the recording industry.
sure.
If you don't have distribution for a record that you produce,
Right.
or an album, forget it.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
It's
But-
not gonna
But
happen.
another
Right.
thing that happens because of
Or if you don't
YouTube-
have access to people who have connections with the radio,
Right.
and they're gonna be playing your record, and people are gonna be demanding it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then maybe you can get distribution.
Right. Right.
Because I noticed that Michael used to listen to the radio when we were driving, when we were going to Neverland, to
Right.
the Sycamore Valley Ranch before he bought it.
Yeah.
We would drive a 200-mile drive,
Right.
and he would be listening to the radio to see if they're playing his music.
Music.
And he would figure, and he knew what stations were supposed to play it.
Right.
And if they weren't playing it, or if they were playing it, a
Yeah,
lot of times he
yeah,
liked it.
Yeah.
But he was checking on
Of course.
on how much his music was being played.
Yeah.
Well, Frank DeLeo was really good at that.
Frank DeLeo.
DeLeo, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was so good at it when he was at CBS. In the early days, that's what he did, was payola for radio stations a lot of times.
Well, that was his job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell me something. If he didn't hear, if Michael didn't hear the station playing much of his music, would he have someone call about it?
Yeah, he would have somebody call. Michael
Yeah.
never did anything himself.
Themselves. They always had
And
someone
he
else.
never argued, fought,
Right.
or challenged anybody,
Right.
or argued with anybody.
Right. Right.
He never contradicted anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to fight Michael's battles for him.
Yeah.
Because he had lots of staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was a very timid person.
Yeah.
And he did not want to anger anybody.
Right. Right.
If he had a different opinion than they did
Yeah.
about something.
But jumped
Or
up.
they neglected to do something.
Yes.
Because I know I spoke up on his behalf many, many
Right.
times.
Well, Bob Jones came out and said after he, well, no, not after his death, when you get that trial, about the little kid or whatever.
When they accused him falsely.
Yes,
Yeah, that was
exactly.
And Michael could not fight because John Branca told him, you are booked around the world.
Yes,
We've paid the stadiums
yes,
and people have, tickets have been sold.
Yeah.
And you've got to go.
Yeah.
And we got to pay those people off. We don't have time to go to trial.
Yes.
Or be staying here
Yeah.
in dispute over 22 million when you're going to make 180 million.
Was that the 50 concerts that he was
No, that's the end.
That was
That was
the
at
end.
the end.
That was
Okay.
at
No,
the
this,
end.
this was like during the bad.
During the trial?
No, this is not during the trial. This
Yeah.
is at the beginning of
At the
his career.
beginning, okay.
At the very beginning of Michael's career,
Yeah.
he had problems. They had booked him around the world.
Right,
In numerous states, in Australia, taken 15 million down payment,
yeah.
sold tickets over there. He's got to appear.
He has to appear.
That's why he paid that kid that 15 or 20 million to John.
That's why
Johnny
he
Cochran.
paid off, because
Yeah.
John
With
Breaker
Johnny
said,
Cochran, yeah,
John Breaker told him, pay him off.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because we're in a lot of trouble if you
Yeah,
miss
you got-
one concert.
default.
We're booked. We've
Yeah.
taken money around the world. We have to perform.
Absolutely. they
And
would
then he had
sue.
to have people who impersonated him and danced like he did.
Yes.
Because Michael could not possibly dance that much either.
right, right,
Yeah.
He had endless energy
yeah,
and he ate food that created energy, seeds and juices and
Yeah.
vegetables and fruits
Right.
and stuff.
right.
And very little, he never ate meat, he just,
Well,
Really?
Well, no.
A little bit of
Michael,
chicken.
Michael, his favorite food was Kentucky Fried Chicken.
but not all the time.
Not all the time, but I mean, that was his treat.
Once a year.
Yeah,
Kentucky Fried
He,
Chicken.
he could not have it around the world.
yeah,
That
Yeah.
was, that does not, did not exist around the world, now it does.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But when he was home,
Yeah,
he could have a little piece of Kentucky Fried Chicken because they ordered it
right.
for on Haymanhurst.
What was his main healthy food? that-
All vegetables, all fruits.
Oh, really?
And he created his own, and he brought his, he never took water from any stranger
Right,
or anything from anyone because they were, when they were the Jackson Five,
yeah,
they were told never to accept any food or any water from any stranger or any
Right.
soda pop
Yeah,
because, you know, they were such successful blacks. And the black people, some people were very jealous
Right.
and there was very prejudice,
Yes,
great prejudice.
yes,
And they might poison them.
right.
yeah,
And
And
they
they're
still
not-
are.
They're not to eat anything or
Right.
drink anything from anyone.
yeah, because
Right,
people
right.
used to bake cakes and pies for them all the time, and they had
No.
to toss them.
So they could,
Yeah.
they were forbidden by their parents
Yes,
and they obeyed their parents.
yes,
And also they obeyed the people who put them into these venues.
right.
Because if something happened to Michael, if somebody poisoned him,
Everything will be gone down
Yeah.
the drain.
So, Michael, what impacted your life most growing up at an early age? In a place like Green Tree Holler?
I'm going to tell you, Steve, all about because I got to tell you, my father was an alcoholic. And of course, anyone who has that kind of problem, there's always a fallout in a negative way as far as the family is concerned. And because I was the oldest, I was very sensitive about everything he did and how he reacted to my mother and to my few siblings that were alive at the time, you know. So that was something very, very, had an effect on my personality. After all, I was only about 6 years old when I was confronted with a neighbor who was called Big Ben. And Big Ben took advantage of me and raped me when I was 6 years old. And since, as I told you, we didn't have an indoor toilet, and he took me in an outhouse and he raped me there. My father was close by watching the whole thing. He was drinking a bottle of gin or whatever, it was alcoholic. He watched me scream and yell and cry for help, and he just sat there on the fence and watched this Big Ben pull me in the outhouse and do what he had to do. When I was bleeding and I was yelling for help, nothing, no, I had no one to come to help me. And later on, I watched Big Ben from my bedroom window get stabbed to death. I don't know if it's because it was a rumor what he had done or whatever, but he got in a fight with another member of the community, the small community, and he was stabbed and I saw him die. And then not too long after that, I was raped again by an Italian guy, and he invited me over for a little lunch because I was supposed to be special kids of Green Tree Hollow, and the lunch he wanted was not a pizza, I'll tell you that. And from that moment on, I was suspicious of anybody who wanted to give me lunch or anything else. And you can imagine at that time, being 6 years old, and not only that, there was a little girl who asked me to feel her private parts, and I did. And when I went home and I had dinner with the family, they wondered why I only ate with my left hand. I was right-handed, because I couldn't raise my hand. I was afraid of this hand, and that's the truth. I'm telling you. See, when you're a kid, all of this leaves an impression on you. And I was suspicious of everybody, women and men as well, because I thought, what did they want of me? And I knew exactly I was suspicious, because I felt strange. And I wanted to tell my grandmother, but I was afraid to tell my grandmother. I always had an open conversation with my grandmother. I trusted her tremendously, but when it came to body functions and sex that they whispered about, but of course adults don't really understand that young people, they do hear, and they conjure up images and things like that. So I grew up, with a father who was an alcoholic, who was at a temper, was always a fight in the house. My mother was always crying and bleeding or so, and here I was 5 or 6 years old, wondering what could I do to help mom, And when I tried to, I got, kicked around on the floor, or slapped down, or got the strap, and I would go and hide while she was crying, etc. And when I saw her bruised, her face was bruised, her arms were bruised, and she was bleeding, and no one came to help her because this was the kind of community, they understood what was going on, but they stayed to themselves, unless my mother escaped the house and ran to a neighbor's house and hid there until my father sobered up, and I watched that, And being the oldest, even at 5 or 6 years old, it makes a difference how you see the world. It makes a difference how you see, we wonder how you would fit in a world like this. So the normal kind of existence and relationships I never had, because my body was always seemed up for grabs. I was self-conscious. They said I was different. They thought I was cute, and I heard them talking, and the men too, and some of the women. It was very disturbing. And some of my times, my father would have relationships with some of the known prostitutes of the community. Yes, of a small community like that. And I would see him go off with, especially one that was called Sophie. She always wore green. And I watched my father go and really have an affair with her in her house. And my mother had suspicions of it, or maybe one of her female friends warned her of what was going on, and my mother went and threw rocks through the window when he was having an affair with Sophie. And my father jumped from the second-story window of the house and ran in the woods, stark naked. When I watched that, I was confused completely. I didn't know exactly what to believe or think about the world I was in at all. My only relief for happiness was when my Aunt Hetty came from Boston University to visit the family, and she played the piano, music, and she talked to me about music. I asked questions because I was curious, and that was something that gave me a lift. But living in Green Tree Hollow was hell, because I was a victim of guys and some of the women and young girls there who wanted to take advantage of me. I felt as if I was something odd, something different, something. And they loved the way I spoke. They say, he speaks like he doesn't belong here or whatever. And that bothered me tremendously, because I said, how was I supposed to talk? How was I supposed, because I like music, and we didn't have electricity in the house, and the only thing I could rely on as far as knowing about the world and what was out there to expect, what came from my aunt, who was in Boston, and she would come and talk about her experiences there with music and going and seeing shows in New York. I dreamt and fantasized about that, and classical music and some of the great artists, etc. You know, but that was the bright side. And then when my aunt died from childbirth, that really upset me as well, because that's when I began to imagine all sorts of things. Because on her funeral day, when she was buried, and I was all by myself in the front yard of my grandmother, I thought I heard my aunt's voice, Aunt Hetty's voice, and that made a difference. She called Sonny, Sonny, Sonny. And I thought my mother was calling me, so I ran to my mom. I said, Mom, you should call me. She says, no. I knew for the first time that there was something else that I didn't understand that human life could experience. You know, there was the world of spirits or whatever. But from that moment on, I knew that I had a way of extending some sort of connection with another world that weren't existing, that we could touch or feel, but possibly we could hear, and if you're lucky, you could see. So I had a lot of these things conjured up in my mind, and I was mixed up, I was confused, and I was abused because my father always hit me first. He always went to me first because he knew I didn't like him. I didn't like the man because he hurt my mother, and that made me have my feelings. Then I began to wet the bed. I began to stutter. I began to have nightmares, and I began to stay away from people. I was a loner, you know, and my father, at every time he tried to harm my mother, that's when it confused me more, and that's when I got it too, because I would bash him if I could. I would stand between them, and he'd knock me down to the floor. And when my mother was pregnant again, I watched him knock her down a pair of stairs. It was awful. And my brother was born, of course, luckily, but it was quite an experience. And we had to finally move because of a fight they had. It was too brutal. And we stayed in various places until we moved to a place called Morton, Pennsylvania, which was about 10 miles from Philadelphia. Life was hopefully going to be different, but it wasn't. It was the same play all over again. It was more fights. I had to escape to the neighbor's house, and I got to know so many people in the town. When I was about, say, 12 years old or 11 years old, I became a paper boy. So therefore, I was the town's paper boy. I knew everybody in town. I served the Chester Times to every house in the town. That's how I got extra money. But when I went to a school called Phyllis Weekly School, it was an all-black school from the 1st to the 8th grade. And I'm glad that I did, because it taught me about Paul Robeson, Mary Anderson, Roland Hayes, some of the great scientists, black scientists, some of the people who had come from slavery and fought against it and survived and educated themselves. And that really enlightened me. That really made me think that I might have a chance to survive in the world, you know. But because we broke in school at noontime, I would have to go home, like most of the kids did, for an hour break for lunch. It's a small town, Morton was. And I'd go home, see my mother lying on the floor in a pool of blood, or she was crying, or she had cuts on her arms, or she's bleeding from something horrible in her face, and I would be shaking. That's when my stuttering got worse. Then I'd go back to school, and when I was in 3rd grade, I couldn't pass the grade. I was left back in 3rd grade because I would experience all this heinous experience with my father. I'd go back to school and sit there. If I had a test in 3rd grade, I couldn't pass it. It was impossible because I was fighting the image I saw when I went home for lunch. So I was left back, and my sister caught up with me in the 3rd grade, so we graduated together. In the 8th grade, that's when we went to a mixed school, you know, with whites and blacks. And that's when, and I went to a school called Swarthmore. And Swarthmore only accepted the brightest kids, no matter where they're from, in that part of Pennsylvania. You know, Morton, Pennsylvania, Chester, Media, Darby, and they only accepted the best students. So I was one. My sister and I were the students accepted at the same time. And even at Swarthmore, I was accepted as, well, I was voted the class president of my freshman class. And because they saw that I was a little bit different, I had a teacher by the name of Miss Matthews. That's in my play, Hollywood, my play, and also in my book, and I Feel Sin coming on, that we're working on now. And the book, of course, is hopefully going to be a film or miniseries. But Miss Matthews played a very important part in my life. She insisted that I appear in the senior play, and as the first black, and there were only a few blacks in that school. And it was a very, just like going to a Harvard or Yale, the high school system itself. And they I wanted to play, she selected, insisted I play Hamlet in the play. And that was a shock for the student body and for the town of Swarthmore. It was a shock. They said, how could you select this black kid to play Hamlet? Hamlet of all characters of Shakespeare, because Miss Matthews said, because he's talented, he can do it. He's better than all the other students we have here at Swarthmore. And so the anger and all the other things that came up because of that announcement, my mother had to go to Swarthmore and deal with the principal, because it was pretty horrible. I mean, they tried to attack my family home in Morton. The rocks were thrown through the window. My mother they almost tried to run her down in the car. And I was threatened by some of the townspeople of Swarthmore. I know, and that's when the real face of Swarthmore was shown, because never before, their ideal, what should be, was challenged. And Miss Matthews, this white teacher, said, no, this guy, this kid in this class is exceptional, he's going to play it, otherwise I will resign from Swarthmore High School. And that changed the whole scene right there, and especially when she and my mother got together and confronted the principal, Mr. Thompson, and some of the board members of the school. So when I played and did the play, Hamlet, they painted me white, makeup, and that's how I did it. So I said, my mother says, I don't care what you do to him, he's going on that stage. And it was quite a challenge there. But then I had, after that, I had to get friends from Swarthmore College, which was right across the road from Swarthmore High School. So I became friends of Swarthmore College, because they were very liberal. They accepted me who I was. Then too, I was doing radio shows and television shows. I was on the Paul Whiteman TV Teen Club show. And Paul Whiteman discovered Bing Crosby, people like that. And he had a show at WFIL, which was, I think it was with the extension of CBS or NBC. But then I was doing a children's hour, a radio show, and that was quite exciting. So I was on television on Saturday, people recognized me, and on Sunday I was on radio. So I did have, a following of sorts, and this is another reason why Miss Matthews thought that this would be interesting to shock the whole student body. It was an extraordinary experience, but it was still, it took an emotional, it was emotionally very stressful for me, because it seemed to me no matter what I did and what I decided to do or what I was accepted to do, it was a challenge to follow through. There was always a group of people who wanted to stop me or make me feel insignificant, or make me feel because of my color that I didn't deserve to have it. So from my childhood, going through regular school and going through high school, it was a war to prove that I deserved to be what I wanted to be. And I really, because of my aunt really, who died very early, really her experience as a musician, she's a brilliant musician, and the way she talked to me about the future and what was possible if I made up my mind that I wanted to do it, that I should do it no matter what. So I didn't have a normal beginning. My beginning was proving that I could be, that I was qualified, that I had to, that because of my mother and my grandmother, who was extremely supportive, I had to really make them know that I could make them happy, that the family could be recognized as special, because the whole town of Morton sort of supported me as well, no matter what I did, because I was on radio, I was on television, I got into Swarthmore, and all those things that most people or young people were not getting an opportunity for, you know. So from the time I left high school and got into Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana, but then there was Richmond, Indiana. I was voted the class president, the first black class president of that Quaker college, Earlham College. And it was wonderful as far as the students were concerned. Of course, you had some challenges from the other guys who wanted to be class president too. Well, that's normal for guys or women, or it doesn't matter. When you're in college, you're going to have challenges that people who really want to better you or whatever. But I may not find them. But at homecoming parade, unfortunately, the townspeople there were some KKK members there, and they at homecoming they confronted me and some of my class people, and they threw rocks, they threw bats, they threw produce, they threw other things as well, and they wanted to attack my class, and I was marching down Main Street, with my other class members, and some fights broke out, and the guys and my buddies, Harold Vizino and another buddy of mine there, they got me out of the parade and the homecoming parade, and got me back on campus and took me to the dean's house, and they hid me in the attic of the dean's house because they were fearful because of the action of the KKK. And it's a good things that they did.
So Mike, I've heard some stories about you and James Dean. Care to share that with us?
My time with James Dean, couple of years that I spent with him, I was introduced to him by a writer who was working with Betty White on her television show, and she said that you should meet this young new actor, James Dean. I said, oh yeah, he sounds very interesting. She said, I think you guys will get along very well. I wonder why she said it in that way, and she smiled. I said, okay. So she had a little dinner at her house above Franklin Avenue in Hollywood, a lovely little house where she was married to a minister, a young minister. She was older, but she was married to a young minister, a very nice guy. And we about 4 or 5 people from the industry was there, and James Dean came in and looked at me and smiled. He says, this must be this Michael St. John. And she says, yes, and I smiled, we talked. And so we got along very quickly and talked about the industry, about music, about dancing, and he knew Eartha Kitt as well. As a matter of fact, he was studying the type of dance that she was involved in as well. So, and I had always, of course, been involved in and loved all sorts of modern dancing and interpretive dancing, etc. And he made excuses during the week to give me a call when he was free. We would go to a restaurant and talk about music, or we would discuss what's in the industry. He admired Alec Guinness, and by the way, and of course I admired Alec Guinness too. And so we would he would pick me up. He had a motorcycle at one point, and he would pick me up on campus, because I was staying on campus. He'd pick me up on campus, and he'd drive me up to Griffith Park and observatory up there, and we just stand and walk around up there, and we were very, very close, but put it that way. And and I enjoyed him. He enjoyed me, and we shared a lot of personal feelings, etc. He says, you're so easy to talk with, and he was. He was easy. He was easy for me to relate certain things, very personal, private things. He felt safe and comfortable, so we got along very, very much. So and there was a point when he had flashes of relationships with girls that he knew darn well he couldn't follow through completely with, but he got involved with Pia Angeli, an actress. I think she was on a contract to Warner Brothers, and she got involved with a singer, put it that way, and she was going to marry him, this singer, and then he flushed off from her. He was devastated by it. Then he got involved with a musician at the Philharmonic Orchestra in LA, and he didn't trust any. He said, "You can't trust these broads, I said, "Well, and so he was supposed to have a date with one of these musicians, and this girl, really, I think she played the cello or whatever, and she decided that she didn't want to go out with Jimmy one time, because she had a rehearsal with another musician, and she was living out in the valley. She says, "I can't be with you, Jimmy, tonight." And he called me. He says, "I'm gonna pick you up off the campus, and I'm gonna drive you out to the valley. I'm gonna find out what she's really doing. Would you do it for me?" I said, "What time?" He said, "It was late at night." I said, "Jimmy, black people can't go and be in the valley at night after 10 o'clock. And so he said, "You'll be with me." So he picked me up. We went in the valley, and he took me. He parked away a block away from the house where she was living. He said, "I know if she's rehearsing it at her house there, that she said she would be with this guy. I want you to peep in the window and see what they're really doing." I said, "Are you kidding? Me doing this in the valley at this time of night?" And he says, "Do it, please." I said, "Okay." So I got out of the car, went to the side of the house and looked into the window. And if she was rehearsing with the cello, it was a strange kind of cello, because when I saw them doing, it was something, not the cello that she was playing with. And I went back and told Jimmy what I saw, and he says he was silent. He started the car. He started driving. Then he parked after about 5 minutes away from that woman's house, the girl's house. He stopped and parked. He unzipped his trousers and he masturbated terribly. And I looked straight ahead as if he wasn't masturbating. And he says, "I'm a bad boy." I said, well, "You're a very interesting person." I said, "Well, you're an actor, aren't you?" And I said, "You let it all hang out." He says, "I guess I do." And he zipped himself back up, and he drove me back to the campus, and nothing else was said. I said, "Well, it was quite the experience to have a person like Jimmy Dean express his frustration, his anger that way right in front of me, But he had other things, traits as well, and other inhibitions as well, and other things that I don't want to talk about. But I experienced a lot of things with him. But he was a wonderful guy. He was pretty much like he was on camera. But he was heartbroken because Marlon Brando, every time he called Marlon, he says, "I called Marlon. He didn't want to talk to me." But his wife, she always made excuses. And because Marlon thought he was copying him as an actor. All his little physical ways of expressing himself on camera, trying to build a character, he copied Marlon. And Marlon resented it terribly. But Jimmy kept calling him no matter what, because he really idolized Marlon Brando. And because I knew Marlon Brando myself, I knew as well how Marlon felt about him, really, But Jimmy, I really idolized him, and then too, it was very strange because he idolized Alec Guinness as well. He liked Alec Guinness. He liked Marlon Brando. He liked those type of actors that seem to move and speak honestly and freely and as a character. And that's why he tried to adapt all of those mannerisms with any character he played in any film he did do that the public was able to see. It was interesting to see and observe and learn how other actors affect actors that you idolize, you know. So that's the main thing I want to reveal about James Dean and my relationship with him. It was stronger than what I'm pontificating and talking about, but we have a very close, loving relationship. I can say it. I can put it that way because I learned a lot from him, you know.
Show me the river. Ah, show me the river.